What is good, my friend? Welcome back to Physical Media Sunday. Another week has just gone by, and it's time for us to sit down and enjoy a little bit of time together here. If you haven't already, do make sure you hit that subscribe button. It would help me out a whole lot in the process. But yeah, let's go ahead and dive into this thing. See, normally I write a lot of scripts for my short form content. If you've been watching me on all the other apps, you would know what I'm talking about. I'm writing somewhere around 5 scripts a week at least. And this, time on Physical Media Sunday, it's a time for me just to kind of, grab a little something and just talk about it for a little while, just sort of freewheel with it, not be prepared with the words I'm going to say. It's just you and me hanging out here, talking about physical media, talking about something we want to do, just kind of a place for me to sort of, relaxed, I guess. I don't know. I love all of it. I love the writing process, don't get me wrong, but sometimes I just kind of like to go off the cuff. But this episode is going to be a little bit different because I did decide to go ahead and do a bunch of research. I wrote a bunch of stuff down, which I'm looking at over here on my other display right now, because I've had this question for a while, and I wanted to do a deep dive into this when it comes to this streaming hell that we are in. Because streaming, I mean, let's face it, it sucks today. It really does. And I was just wondering, how did we get here? Like, from the start of home video entertainment to now, what landed us in the spot that we are in? So I looked back and I took a closer look at just the start of home video and all the phases we went through over the decades up until today, just to kind of try and get a general idea, general picture. Now, this is not going to be meant to be a big, very, very detailed, comprehensive look. We are painting with broad strokes here, but I think by the end of this, you and I will both have a better understanding as to the situation that we are in now and why physical media is just better in general. So to figure this out, we have to go all the way back to 1975, whenever Sony introduced the Betamax tape and player. And then the very next year, JVC introduced the VHS tape and the VCR. Now, JVC, what they did was they had an open license for the VHS technology, for the VCR, so that their competitors could also make VHS tapes and VCRs. And this was seen as being overall better for the consumer and also an effective way at curbing Sony's monopoly of the Betamax technology. Now, Sony did relent and came around on licensing that technology to their competitors, but by the time they did that, coupled with the fact that VHS tapes could record for longer periods of time than a Betamax tape could, the VHS was already the dominant form of home entertainment tape. Now, in 1977, this newer company that was roughly about 10 years old, called Magnetic Video, they were known for producing film. And they went to 20th Century Fox and they convinced them to license 50 of their titles for sale for home video release. And so when they worked out the deal, they started producing Betamax tapes and VHS tapes with these 50 20th Century Fox movies on them. Now, these movies would cost about $80 on the lower end, which was about $400 in today's money. Now, these movies would cost about $80 a piece, which is somewhere around $400 in today's money, actually over $400 in today's money. And while, yeah, sure, new technology is always going to be more expensive, you could see where this was not intended for the average family to own. The average person was not going to be buying VHS tapes on a regular basis. I mean, $50 would be a lot to ask for a 4K physical release today, depending upon the movie. Now, that same year, a guy by the name of George Atkinson opened what would become known as Video Station. It was considered to be the first professionally managed video rental store. What he did was he bought a copy of each of these movies on VHS and one copy on Betamax, and then rented them out to people. Now, he gave you options. You could either get a yearly membership for $50, a lifetime membership for $100, or you could rent each tape for $10 a night. And at the time, $10 was equivalent to about $50 today. So as you can see, this was still cost prohibitive for average people just to even rent movies. But this did lay down the blueprint for mom and pop rental shops all across the country. Now, let's fast forward to 1985, when a guy by the name of David Cook opened the first Blockbuster store. You see, Cook was already a successful businessman. He had a company that provided software services to oil and gas companies in Texas. And his capital allowed him the ability to build new Blockbuster video stores very quickly, and also allowed him to establish warehouses for distribution to those stores. Now, not only that, but his software experience allowed him the ability to build databases. Now, these databases were great for inventory management, but they were also great for tailoring the inventory of each store to the specific needs and taste of each neighborhood in which there was a Blockbuster. And the volume that Blockbuster operated at allowed them to rent out movies at $5 per night at most, which would have been around $15 a day today. So you could see this being a way more reasonable price point for your average person. Now, you could see this being a way more reasonable price point for your average person, especially whenever you consider that purchasing a new VHS tape would still cost $80. Yeah, sure, the price on that tape would come down after it had been out for a while, but you have to think about this as well. After it had been out, there's also new movies coming out on VHS that you're going to want to see, and you're going to have to choose between whether you want to rent the new tape or buy the old tape that's already been out that you've already seen. Now, of course, this worked very well for Blockbuster for quite a while. They would go in, they would buy a stack of tapes at wholesale prices, still kind of high. They're still paying roughly around $60 to $70 per tape, but not full price, and they would rent it out. And this went along until the late 1990s. You see, by 1998, Blockbuster started to question, why are we putting in all this money up front? I mean, we're basically printing money by constantly renting titles and having them returned to us. So yeah, why are we paying all this money up front? We could be paying a lot less and making still almost the same amount as things come in and out. So Blockbuster worked out a deal with the major studios where they would only pay just a few dollars for each tape, and in return they would share a percentage of what they made with the studios. They'd be paying anywhere from 30 to 45%, depending on the movie, depending on the studio, depending on how long it had been out, that sort of thing. And this was the kind of thing that allowed Blockbuster to stock up on more tapes and rent out more tapes, because if you're about my age, you already know the feeling of going to Blockbuster and trying to rent a tape and they didn't have any more of it left. They didn't have that problem with the newer tapes. Once you could stockpile way more because you're only paying about $4 to $8 for each one, yeah, it was way easier to keep all the new stuff that everybody wanted in stock. But you see where I'm going with this. The idea was that you were never, ever actually meant to own your movies up until this point. They just wanted you to rent them. They wanted to get a piece of you renting each movie, and that was it. They didn't want you to actually have it. Yes, people did have VHS tapes, as is evident by the things that you see behind me over here, but most people didn't have a huge library of VHS tapes in their house. They just didn't. You had some of your favorites, but you didn't go out and buy the newest thing every single time it hit the shelf. If you did, it was because you were an enthusiast or you just had the money to do it. Now, this deal worked great for Blockbuster at first, but it wouldn't be long before things would change. You see, whenever DVDs came out, studios like Warner Brothers specifically, they wanted a larger cut of each rental. They argued that because it was newer technology, they should be getting paid more, even though it cost way less to produce a DVD. And Blockbuster, they decided to push back on that. So what did Warner Brothers do? Well, what they did was they cut the price of new DVDs down to about $15 to $20 a piece. So you could rent a DVD from Blockbuster for a few nights for $5, or for $15, you could just have it in your home forever. So you see, the idea was empower the consumer, but only to squeeze out Blockbuster. And in the process, they ended up squeezing out all the mom and pop video shops as well. But the video rental stores didn't just have Warner Brothers as an enemy. No, they were being attacked on the other side by a company called Netflix. You see, Netflix was started in 1998, and at the time, you would just pay a monthly membership fee to them, and they would mail DVDs to your house. You would go online, you would build a queue of what you wanted, and then they would mail it to you, and then as you returned the DVD to them, they would send you whatever else was in your queue. And by just paying this flat monthly membership fee, you didn't have the late fees that you would get from Blockbuster whenever you return something late. You just kept the DVD as long as you wanted to, and you just paid the same regular flat rate the whole time. So you could watch as many movies as you wanted to, or as few movies as you wanted to. It was up to you. You had way more choice, you had way more freedom, and you didn't even have to leave your house. So yes, while consumers, we did benefit for a while off of the availability, ultimately they squeezed out the rental stores, so it ended up being worse for us in the long run. Then of course Netflix introduced Watch Now in 2007, and ultimately we just chose convenience over ownership. And over time, people stopped wanting to pay for cable. And let's be honest, the cable companies, they are not popular with consumers. So people just started to ditch cable and go to streaming, and now here we are. And the thing is, if you add up the ad-free premium version of all of the major streamers, you're looking at paying somewhere around $150 a month. And that's not including the more niche stuff like Crunchyroll or Shudder. And that's $1,800 per year. I need you to think about that. But the thing is, you and I today, we can capitalize on the greed of the studios from the early 2000s because, for one thing, DVDs, they're still making new ones out there because they know there's still a market out there. They know people still want to buy them. And there's just a glut of used DVDs at every single thrift store, at every single swap meet, at pop-up markets, etc. It's just so easy to get your hands on a nice sized library for not a lot of money and get your streaming services. And I'm not saying streaming is all evil, of course. I'm just saying that we do have the power and the ability to make sure that we are not being fully taken advantage of by the streamers. Personally, I mean, yeah, I do pay for a couple streamers. I pay for HBO Max because I do like it. And I also pay for Netflix because there are people in my life that like to watch trashy documentaries with me. But otherwise, the other streamers I have, I just get them already through other services I am already paying for. We talked about this earlier in the series. I believe the first video I ever put out on this channel in this series was where I mentioned that. And of course, Tubi is the GOAT. And Pluto TV as well. You can't really count out Pluto. I do think Pluto is typically criminally overlooked, but there's a lot of good stuff on there. So there you have it. In an attempt to squeeze out Blockbuster and rake in as much cash as possible, the studios, they gave us a little bit more freedom with what we owned for a little while, but that was always just intended to be temporary. They just wanted you to have that until Blockbuster went away. That's it. So yeah, I mean, we do talk about our nostalgia for Blockbuster. Because, you know, it was a great time to just go browse for movies. You smell all the smells in the Blockbuster, the plastic cases that the movies were actually in on the shelf there. But, you know, partially, I think the nostalgia we feel for Blockbuster was just, you know, the freedom that it gave us in choosing our home entertainment and having the ability to actually, you know, afford all the entertainment we wanted to in our house after you work all day and then you come home and you just want to relax with a movie or, you know, a TV show or something like that at your own pace as you wanted to. But luckily for us, physical media does live on and you can find all sorts of DVDs out there. And I'm curious to know, I mean, what are your physical media purchasing habits? How often are you buying new DVDs? Are you a 4K Ultra HD kind of person, or are you not? I myself am not big into the 4K, not because I have any problem with it, but just because I don't need it. And most everything I get is, you know, it's a budget buy. It's kind of the whole main point of this series right here. How do you maintain your options without breaking the bank? Hope you enjoyed this video. I would love to hear your take on that in the comments as well. If you haven't already, leave me a like, leave me a comment down below, of course, and subscribe if you haven't already. I'm going to be coming back next week. Just a quick preview for you here. We are going to be doing another review this time, a DVD review of this Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 5 film collection. I'm not going to get into that too much right now because I'm going to save that for next week right here on Physical Media Sunday. And I got a couple of other little fun things planned for the next couple weeks here as well. So be sure you are here next week for Physical Media Sunday. I appreciate you being here and listening to me rant for a little while on this episode. I will see you back here very soon. But remember, the future is physical.